So today we look at sit. Again, verse 6. And raised us up together and made us sit together in the heavenly places in Christ Jesus. In the Greek, this is a verb to sit. It's sygkathizo, and it means to sit down together. But there are two root words that make this up. Kathizo, which means to make to sit down, but then also soon, a preposition, which means with or beside or to accompany. It means to sit with someone as they sit, to accompany that person who is already sitting. So who do we accompany as they sit? We accompany Jesus. We sit with Jesus as he sits. Now you might ask, are there any proof texts to prove that Jesus is seated? There are many. Ephesians 1 verse 20, that raised Christ from the dead and seated him in the place of honor at God's right hand in the heavenly realms. Hebrews 10:12. But our high priest offered himself, Jesus, to God as a single sacrifice for sin, good for all time. He then sat down in the place of honor at God's right hand. Hebrews 1:3. The Son radiates God's own glory and expresses the very character of God. And he sustains everything by the mighty power of his command. When he had cleansed us from sins, his death on the cross, he sat down in the place of honor at the right hand of the majestic God in heaven. And Hebrews 12:2. We do this by keeping our eyes on Jesus, the champion who initiates and perfects our faith. Because of the joy awaiting him, he endured the cross, disregarding its shame. Now he is seated in the place of honor beside God's throne. And what does sitting down indicate? Well, in an agrarian or farming culture, it indicates that you've stopped working. You work, and then when you're done working, you sit. And why did Jesus sit when he arrived in heaven? Because he had finished his work. It was finished. John 19:30, he said that when Jesus on the cross had tasted the sour wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and released his spirit. It is finished. What is finished? His death on the cross to redeem fallen man. Hebrews 10, verse 10, says this in fullness, for God's will was for us to be made holy by the sacrifice of the body of Jesus Christ once for all time. Once for all time. Under the old covenant, the priest stands, doesn't sit, stands and ministers before the altar day after day, offering the same sacrifices again and again. Laborious work, which can never take away sins. But our high priest offered himself to God as a single sacrifice for sins, good for all time. Then he sat down in the place of honor at God's right hand. 2 times it says, once for all time. Then he sat down at God's right hand. Because it was done once for all time, he does not need to get up again. His work is finished. And here's the truth, folks. Your real love relationship with Jesus, you're living in the absolute confidence of his unconditional, never wavering, never changing love and acceptance for you will only begin when you see yourself seated with him, resting in his love, as opposed to you striving after good works so as to try to earn his favor and or maintain your salvation. You see, many Christians make the mistake of applying human logic here and thinking that the correct order has to be walk first and then sit. Work and then rest. That's our logic, right? You rest after you work. Our logical mind says, how can I ever advance in my Christian walk if I don't walk, if I don't move? But God's love operates outside the boundaries of reasonable logic or expectation. In truth, your faith journey with Jesus begins not with a big do, but with a big done. The work has been finished.
You don't want to miss next week.